paper has a heavier weight to it. So it'll hold the moisture from the paint. And if you add water to your paints, then it would hold that moisture as well. And believe it or not, we will not use any water today to make this happen. It will be completely a dry brush technique that we're going to put on this. But anyway, mixed media paper, it's a great solution. The other awesomeness about this is it's an 11 by 14. So here you have it, 11 by 14. What that means is it comes in a standard frame, right? So if you wanted to buy a cheap frame, put your piece of art in a frame at an economical price, you could frame your masterpiece. So that 11 by 14, sadly, I did not have an 11 by 14 canvas nor an 11 by 14 wooden panel that was free. Believe that or not. So I've since have some coming to the house, but they're not here today. This, gratefully, is an 11 by 17. This I put together last night. It is on canvas. Someone gives me canvases, and this one had a hole in it, so I taped it from behind, which is a great solution. And you can't even see it. It becomes part of the texture in the leaf. But I'm going to paint today on an 11 by 17 canvas. I mentioned in my Instagram that when you're painting on canvas, it is not a porous foundation. It's been primed with gesso, so it's really the water or the moisture will sit on the canvas until the paint adheres to the canvas and dries. So what that does is that makes me have to go a little slower and have to be a little patient. And I like to use a lot of paint, even with fluid paint. So that's going to challenge me. And if it's challenging me, then it may challenge you. So my suggestion is to go slow. My other suggestion is if you're not comfortable painting fast, to perhaps give it a minute and watch and then come back and rewind it. I will leave it up. I've decided that I will put it back up. I may drop it after this broadcast and go in and edit it and then put it back up. We'll see how that goes. But the paints that I'm using are Liquitex. They're a basic. It's an economical paint. I typically use Golden and Nova paints for my fine art pieces. But for playing around and mixing and playing with color and finding different color combinations or palettes, I like to use the Liquitex Basics. And I like to show other people the economical solutions to paint that aren't the most expensive and that aren't the cheapest. The other thing that we're going to utilize, or I am going to utilize, is a glazing medium. It does not take a lot of medium at all, but it really is worth the investment. And if you're going to paint with me over the summer, every Thursday at 3, minimally, I may be adding another class to it. I will introduce glazing medium to each class. I will introduce a purple pastel pencil to each class, detail brushes, cheap flat brushes, and some chalk, guaranteed. Also, the paints that I noted in the description will be utilized probably with each class, and I've already made the painting for next week, and I'll be adding a few colors to that. So we're going to start out first with drawing our subject. And again, this is an 11 by 17. So if you're working on a taller piece, you want to elongate your drawing. This was the 11 by 14, the original. Where can I put that so you can see it perhaps? Maybe. And if you haven't, what I failed to do in my description was to tell you to print it or to take a picture of it and use that as your example, because I cannot show you my example. So hopefully you can do that. But what I am going to say is in this original is I'm not at the halfway point on the page. I am just my right of center when I'm drawing this. And I'm about an inch to three quarters of an inch to an inch from the outer edge. The distance or the height of my vessel, if you will, is an approximate length of a pencil or a small pen or a small paintbrush. I did mention a plastic knife earlier in the day. So that's about the size, the length, the height that we're going to go for. So I mentioned a purple pastel. I like the purple pastel. Purple, pretty color. And I said about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just putting my edge of my pencil and I'm coming up, drawing an approximate straight line. The pastel pencil gives a texture. So that's a great thing for the paint to bind to. Gives a line that can be seen. We're going to add some lines. Let's pretend maybe this is like a ball jar, perhaps. I just like to put lines at the top. So that's the extent of the vessel. We had 3 main subjects here that makes my lovely little triangle. And it's really keeping in the same line as the floor down below. So I have this floor or this tabletop at an angle here. And that the floral arrangement up here at the top in my triangle, the bottom of it, is in the same direction or holding that same plane. And instead of a circle, try a square. So shapes, all things are made of shape. And we sometimes go round and round and round with a circle, and that limits us in our paint. So I like to square things off in triangles and squares, if that makes sense for anybody. So that keeps that flower pushing in that direction. Gives it a 3-dimensional look right out of the gate. And you're gonna get mad at me because we're gonna paint over this right away, and you're gonna say, why did I draw this? And you're drawing it for eye memory and muscle memory in your brain for when we paint later. The tiny one is down here at the base. So again, I'm kind of going with a square, if you will, adding a few triangular shapes. This one's gonna come in this down to my right corner area. Then the third guy, the Majesty, we're just going to create a giant portal. And what I really want to make happen is down here at the bottom, I want you to see that I'm going to leave this pretty open down here. So remember that, please. You can. Then I do know that we're going to put another flower up here just because, but there's our 1, 2, 3. I like odd numbers, so I'll put something up here as well. And that's the extent of that for our drawing. And here's what is really helps me is I put this in 3 spaces. So I want, let's see, down here, so my bottom left quadrant, and this whole top right side, and then I have this third area over here. What this tells me is I like roadmaps. I want to know where I'm going, how I'm getting there, and the tools that I'm using. So like on a map, depending upon the road is a color. This is going to be my darkest area all through here. It's my darkest colors. No matter what color choices you're using, make this whole area. That's going to be your darkest. This is going to be my middle or my medium, however you want to define that, the mid-grade color. And down here will be my lightest tones or shades, however you want that. With the vessel, we're going to pretend that this vessel is clear. Because it's clear and has reflection, it's going to pick up color from everything. So when we first start out, we're going to color this in probably mostly this light color. But we will get some of this dark in there as well right out of the gate, and we'll introduce another color just to make it stand out a little better. And here's the fun part, is no matter what color we put anywhere on the canvas, or that color will get placed in your vessel in real time. I'm going to show you how to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to set my lovely purple pencil down. If I were to use chalk, my white chalk wouldn't show up. Whatever color you have, feel free. Again, the reason I like purple is I do a lot of faces and other things, and purple just really works well for me. Okay, the first colors, and I'm pulling my Liquitex. I'm going to use Payne's Gray. And we're going to mix paint as we go. That's scary to people, so I'm going to make a little puddle. We're going to use proper terms called puddles. And that's a joke. So I did think in my Instagram post, I said, forget everything you know, because I'm just going to introduce whatever true term comes out of my mouth. There's some magenta. And this is the blue that I noted. So what is important to me is to put the Payne's Gray in the middle. This allows me to pull color and make a section of color here. So for instance, like this. And then it allows me to pull and make color here. So for that dark section, remember this whole area, I'm going to start mainly with this gray. Again, there's no water. Please do not put your brush in water at any time during the lesson. Do not put your brush in water. I'm going to say that one more time. Do not put your brush in water. I would recommend a paper towel or a cloth. And I assure you, as I go through the process, I'm going to be cleaning my brush on the rag as I go in lieu of water. I'm going to be cleaning here. So my darkest color is a mixture predominantly of the gray with just a hint, little smidge of that magenta to start. And just think, right, when you have a vase or anything, something sitting underneath and it's darkest, it's the shadow area. So that pink that's in there, the magenta, will lighten it a bit. You do see me teasing you, and then I'm forcing you to go around all those edges. And that's just to really make you mad when I decide to paint over the top of them. But really, all jokes aside, I just want you to see that this is going to be the color, the shadow underneath these flowers in the long run. And although we are going to paint over those lines, it won't matter. It won't matter, I promise. So 2, that color is seen in your vessel. So with I am using a flat, it's a number 4. I'm just going to drag some of that color into my water. I'm picking up a little pink or the magenta as I go upward. Although it's my darkest area, I'm calling it my darkest area. As I go up to the top, I will brighten it a little bit with that pink, not too much. So stay over here on my right, your left, perhaps. I'm going to keep it dark. And I'm not going to bring that down too much. I'm just going to drag some of it. I will bring some of that up. I did say this is the darkest area. There is some pink or magenta that's on my brush. You can see we're not using a lot of paint. That's wonderful. I like to use heavy-bodied paints, Nova that I mentioned, and I do not have an affiliation with them yet. I'm hoping to. They're a mid-grade paint, kind of a blend or a mixture, a medium between this fluid that we're using. I'm going to grab some more gray. I'm only putting out a little as I go to limit the amount that I put on the canvas, because I'm limited in my time. I want to make sure this dries well enough for me to add the next color. So by putting out very little paint, that helps me to remember to get less is more. And it helps me to not waste as much paint. Okay, while I'm here, just because I love it, I'm just going to pick up a little more of that pink, more pink. I keep saying pink, magenta, then the gray, the Payne's gray, and I'm going to touch these flowers in the shapes, the lines that we put down. I'm not following the lines. I really don't care. I'm just going to put some of this color in randomly. Where it overlaps that gray that we put in, that's okay. I do see that there's people, and if you're watching on YouTube, I don't have a trusted sidekick other than my dog, and I haven't taught my dog yet how to operate the computer. The center of my flower is the darkest, so I am putting more gray in that space. I haven't taught my dog how to operate the computer, so it is me. If you have comments on the YouTube side, I cannot help you. If you were here in Facebook land under the Kat Furrow page, then I can help you, I believe. So we'll see. And if not, and you have my number, shoot me a text. So moving right along, I'm going to come back to this pink over here. Do the same thing. I'm following that line. I'm being random with my brush. Remember, I put that chalk line in the pastel, the purple pastel, in a squared manner, not in a circular manner. So that's the other reason I chose the flat brush over the round brush, round tip, is I really want you to square off your strokes as you're laying the paint down. And although this just looks like a big giant blob, I promise it will come out and say hello later. So I come over to this left side. I am going to use more magenta than the gray, the Payne's gray. Not a whole bunch more. There's a Payne's gray in the bristles of my brush. So although I'm mixing it here and it looks all bright and light, when I put it on my palette or on the canvas, excuse me, it may look darker than what I have mixed here. Who else is supposed to be out here and around? Maybe Nicole. So one, I'm very excited about this piece. I'm excited to be painting live again. I really need to come see my people and create an event out there. I haven't painted live with people in 3 years. I need to do that. So up here I'm going to hit some, just going to touch this, just to touch it, just to remind my brain that there is going to be some flower action going on up here at the top. I promised that everything that we touch up here will come down here. So go ahead and here at the top, I'm just going to clean your the bristles of your brush back and forth here on your canvas. That introduces that color into the vessel, and no water is being added. Remember that we are not using any water through the entire class today. If you want to clean it a little further, you can. So now I'm going to come over here to the blue and the Payne's gray, and I'm okay if some of that magenta gets in here, because I'm going to purposefully do that soon anyway. I'm going to bring some of that right in here. So again, the reason is here's where most of the shadow is, so that's why it's the darkest area. This is my mid area. So I'm creating that. I'm putting out little paint as I go. Well, one is to be economical in my use of paint. But because we're on a timed bit and I'm trying to make this happen in a reasonable amount of time, that's kind of funny. That's why I'm limiting the paint. If I were painting on paper, this could go faster. Where you see the white that's through the canvas, and I don't know if you can see the white through my canvas, that means I have not fully applied enough paint. We will be coming in and putting more rounds of color. So I assure you all the white space will go away. So I'm known for texture and a lot of movement. Maybe it's part of my personality. I just like motion and movement. So feel free to use that small brush and get some motion going on in there. What else? If you keep your line, like let's say you keep your line here, if you use the knife edge of the bristles, meaning the flat edge, the knife, if I were to cut something, that's what that means. And I draw a line, I'm going to remove paint. So I don't want to do that. I want to use the flat form of the brush. And two, if I were using too much paint at this point, and I'm laying it down, even though I was using the bristles, I would lift the paint. I don't wish to do that. So again, I'm going to break out a little more blue. And whoo, we think that is dark. Promise it'll lighten up. And Sharon, I see you. Wow, I see your comment. Yes, we need to do another event. One, I'll do one at your house again if you want. That was fun. What I want to put in here is just a little bit of the light blue. That is going to happen. And while I'm at it, where's my Aqua? Can you see my Aqua? Yes, you can. Okay, I'm keeping my light blue on the light side over here, believe it or not, so then I can try and keep it bright and light. This Aqua has a lot of punch, has a lot of bang for its buck. So meaning it can really brighten, it can really shift a color. So I'm keeping it over here all by its lonesome. So it plays nice. What I want to do is pick up some of this light blue and some of that phthalo blue, and I'm going to pick up some of that gray, and I'm going to bring it down and slap it here on my left side. Gotta like how I talk. Slap it here. Just not be afraid. Put the paint down. You're really going to get a little crazy when we break out that medium and you're like, what happened to all my color? So I'm doing the same thing, picking up some blue, picking up the light blue, picking up some of the darker blue, the phthalo blue, picking up some Payne's gray, because I know it's going to be darker initially because of that Payne's gray. I'm going to start here in the dark space first, and I'm going to pull to my left where it's lighter as that paint blends. That just helps me to be safe or safer. Again, I don't really care about my strokes. I'm just getting the paint and covering as much as I can. And even here, that's kind of cool. I would roll with that, and I am rolling with where I made a mess right there, letting that be. I'm picking up some more of this light blue, and some of the other blue, and I'm not picking up additional gray at this point, and I'm going to come down. There is, again, all those colors are in my brush. So although I'm not picking up additional color, it is in my brush and impacting the color mix. And I don't want this to be boring baby blue all by its lonesome. I'm going to now pick up a little bit of that turquoise or that aqua and bring it in here down at the bottom. Not too much. I could use a larger brush for the background, but maybe I don't use a lot of brushes because I really hate to clean my brushes. That's probably what it is. It would go faster if I used a larger bristled brush. But I think I waste paint in the bristles of brushes with how I paint. I really can grab a lot and it bind in those bristles. So the smaller the bristle for me is good. However, the larger the bristle, the more loose I paint. So I wanted a bristle that was kind of in between, that's not too small, that when I come in here to make the flowers and I make all the eucalyptus and all the tiny detail, that I can accomplish it with this brush, but that I can also come in and have a wider stroke in here when I put petals in this flower. It just so happened I did not want to bring in and add another brush for the background. But I like the small texture that the strokes provide for me. So while all of that, so we went in a counterclockwise manner, and that's to help me remember where we're at. That means that this space on the right-hand side, I haven't touched it for a while, and it's drier than this left space that I just finished painting. And that helps me to remember when I'm moving fast, so that if I lay on the next color, I know to lay to my right first and follow that direction. I mentioned, I teased that this is a water vessel and we're going to put all of the colors in this vessel. So to start, let's just take my brush and come down this purple line. We did draw the vase. So I am just grabbing the light blue, coming over that purple line that I put in there. Most of my line when I am painting the vessel will be a perpendicular, straight up and down. And I will be more cautious of the marks that I make as I'm laying the paint in. Meaning I'll slow down a bit. I'll think of water, and water is more fluid, and it just helps me to slow down. So, and I want to see that. I don't want a bunch of this chaos that's out here in my water vessel. I want to clean up this line. So I'm going to do so. And I need to fill in some over here. And this is relatively darker, right? So this is going to be the shadow line. So I do want to pick up some of this darker blue that was here, and maybe just some of that Payne's gray and magenta. We'll see. Lay that down. That aqua has yellow in it. So you'll see my blue shift quite a bit to a green. For the sake, and I want to put some, let's just put some magenta on top of that. There we go. Okay, while I'm coming back to this vessel, and I'm going to lay down and clean my brush. So I'm taking advantage of all the color, all the paint in my brush, and laying it in my vessel. And what I'd like to do is make a shade of purple. So I'm taking some of this first blue, the Phthalo blue, the Payne's gray, and the magenta, and I'm coming here, and it makes a really pretty purple. And purple kind of is the darkest shade here, these darker tones. And I'm going with a more blue, so there's more blue note, more blue to the paint that I'm adding. And I'm going to come straight across. Remember those purple lines that we put in to start? Just dragging the bristles of the brush across the top. And I'm going to come below about, I don't know, about a ½ inch and put in another line. And in the long run, that's going to give us the idea of the top of the vase. And then we're painting it purple because that would be the shadows from any of the foliage, or if there's a lip on the vessel, it would cast its own shadow. I did not put that blue in there. That blue was a happy accident. We're going to highlight later. So if you need to put that in there, you can. So there's that purple, and I want to color the rest of this space in. So I'm going to pick up some of the dark blue and the light blue and put some straight lines randomly in here. As I come to the bottom, there's more light. So it would be lighter in color. So I will put lighter colors, shades of color, down at the base. Closer I get to the top, it will stay darker. The closer I am to this left side will be lighter than when it is on my right side. As I come to the right of my vessel, the color shade will darken, and as I come upward. So left and low is light, right and high is the darker side. While we're at it, get that knife edge. I talked to you about a knife edge. And flowers have stems. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to lay some line in. And a lot of stems have turns to them. Ranunculus really are really pretty straight stem to them. I did mention ranunculus earlier. However, this could be a rose, so you can vary. You don't have to don't count my stems. Some of these you won't be able to see in the long run anyway. We're creating the idea, and we're creating shadows kind of right now. I promise you some of this will not be seen. And if I had a dozen flowers, let's say a dozen flowers and 6 stems of eucalyptus, so that's 18 stems potentially, I would not paint in 18 stems. You're just painting in the idea of the stem. And if you were to put a vase of flowers together and look at it from a distance, you would not be able to count each individual stem usually. I mean, you could make that happen, but in normal case. Okay, so there's my stems in, and I'm going to grab some more of that Aqua. And since I had purple on my paintbrush, and notice I'm keeping it over here, it makes a really cool shade. I like that's periwinkle to me, or gray. I discovered the color periwinkle 3 years ago in some clouds, morning clouds. Never understood that color. So I'm grabbing all three, some of that blue, some of that Payne's gray, some of that magenta, bringing it over here and grabbing some of my turquoise. I'm going to play in the water and add some gray. Remember, on my right side, it's the darkest. We will add other color later. I'm purposefully going with straight lines. Here on the left side, I want it to stay lighter, so let's demonstrate that. Let's leave that so we can have a mindful visual reminder. Let's pick up some magenta maybe as I come. Now maybe some of that baby blue. And you can't go wrong. So if you're sitting there saying that yours doesn't look like mine, or later when you're painting, it cannot go wrong. No two vessels of water are the same at all. Sharon, I see you said I would love that. I see your comment. I raised my head. And I would love that. Is that you want one at your house or you want one in the area? Because you have me for a while, between now and the 17th of August. Well, actually, not the 17th, but the week prior. I'm back in class. I graduated. Woohoo! Okay, we're going to let that dry. So what's cool about concentrating on that vessel down here, that's right, we forgot all about up here. And we left it alone. We were not fixated on fussing. If you're in class with me, I come around and I actually like smack hands, whoop, like a child. Like quit fussing with it. Don't paint where I'm not asking you to paint. So once you put that in the darks, then the mids, then the lights, they're letting it all dry, right? So we're playing down here in this water while we're letting that area dry some. There's a reason to my madness. Now here's where it's going to get scary. So I cleaned out my brush. No water, please, no water. Again, no water, no water, no water. Acrylic paint sets and dries quickly, but for it to bind and do all of its thing and set and be stable, it takes a while. If you were to come in with water, the water on the canvas is going to lift potentially. So you really want to be mindful of that. So my glaze, that's what I'm going to go with. And I want to break out. So on the original, you see that there's yellows, there's greens, there's this white, there's this, I don't know, that's like a glare, a striation. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there. We achieved that through multiple layers of glaze. And to be successful, I need this layer that we have on here not to be completely dry, but to be somewhat dry so it doesn't turn to mud. And I'm going to grab some yellow that we see. And the yellow is the idea of sunlight for me. That yellow is a translucent yellow, meaning you can see light through it. It's not opaque. A Hansa yellow is more opaque. So I want the translucency, so when that yellow mixes or sets on top of these blues, then it creates its own green. So that's part of what we're doing with it. The medium that we're going to use is clear, and it replaces water. So it gives a different fluidity to the paint. And if you add too much water to paint, particularly the lesser quality paints, it messes with the structure of the paint. We don't want to do that. And then two, we don't want to introduce water because we'll lift the paint off. We don't want to do that either. That's probably way too much information. Okay, so right here, I'm going to put a blob of glaze. So that started out as maybe a nickel and maybe a dime, and it just spread a little bit. So very little glaze. I'm going to grab some of my yellow. Cleaning my brush out quite a bit. I'm doing a deep breath. In addition, I'm breaking out some white. If you've painted with me before, I normally stay away from white until towards the end of the game. And that was in my paint and sip scenarios. white can really shift the colors of paint. So I have it over here all by itself. And white is opaque, meaning it covers things up, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of the white on my brush. I'm just going to get a speck, smidge, little bit of the yellow, and fill about a 1/4 inch of the brush with the medium. Then I'm going to say a little aha, and then that's where it's going. It's really a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. Just go with it, right? And move that paint around, right? I started here in the middle first because I feel like most of the light is going to be breaking in and making an impact here on in that section, right? Where the mid and the light come together. But 2, it creates its own green. So if I keep working that yellow, meaning if I keep messing with it, the yellow is going to completely shift to a green, and I don't want that. I want it to stay kind of bright and light like that. So I'm leaving that alone after I've set it. This yellow down here, I'm going to pick up some more glaze. That's all that's on my brush. And I'm going to come in here and move that yellow around. I'm going to pick up a little more yellow. And that glaze. Maybe just a little more white. And some glaze. And I know that I'm going to come up here and paint, right? So I don't want to push way up in here too much with a heavy layer of glaze or a heavy layer of paint. Because when I come in with the next round of paint, then I will have already had paint. It's going to make mud. I'm not going to be happy. So I'm mindfully staying over here to my left in this little area of the field, if you will, right? And playing all I want. And 2, I like to just show that light is coming in to my work, right? Light is fabulous. We haven't had enough around here. It's been very gray. I tease that it's been the perfect weather. I'm really teasing when I say that. So what else? I want to make sure some of this yellow, the light hits down here, and I'm showing that with my brush stroke. And then I'm going to pick up some of this yellow and put some in my vessel. And with the yellow, I'm going to pull from the left to the right randomly. The thing that is important too, perhaps, is to not apply a whole lot of pressure. So this being pressure, don't put all the pressure that you can into your bristles of your brush. So I'm really dragging down here. And what that does, if I apply a lot of pressure, and I don't want to do that here, it mixes the color on the canvas, and I don't want to do that. I really want it to stay on top somewhat. I do want this line in here, so I have everything's still on my brush, so I just grabbed a little bit of that white. I want to define that edge. I've come back to this vessel. I'm letting things dry over here. I am going to put in a light line. I'm just dragging a line across. So we see that that's the top of the vessel. And will we see that white line and all of that purple later? No, probably not. Most of it will go away because leaves and foliage will fall over the lip of the vessel. But it's easier to put it in now and see part of it than to force a line in later. I don't want to force the line in. If I wait, I would be forcing the line. So I'm going to come in with a little more white because I want to see some of that white. I did a couple of lines straight up and down, and then I did cross over. You'll see how your color that's wet is turning kind of gray in some areas. That's not a bad thing. That's okay. I'm going to pick up some of this blue. It's the light blue. Feel free to dab some of that other color into your brush or grab some and lay that in as well. Don't panic. If your color shifts to some ugly color, just stop adding color. Let it dry some and come in with the next layer next time. Key is not to panic. That's a life lesson, not to panic. I picked up some glaze. I'm doing that again up here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mix some Payne's gray, and there's white on my in the bristles, so it's really going to shift to a lighter gray. I want to grab some white and put in here. Grab some more white. And remember I said the left side would stay lighter than my right. I consider that gray more of a neutral, a light. And you'll see that those lovingly little stems that we painstakingly put in have all but gone away. So let's take some of that paint out of our brush, grab some of the magenta, use that knife edge and come in and just tap. I used to call this walking the dog, so we'll call that walking the dog. That's just setting it down, picking up, setting down, picking up. Instead of just dragging it, which you can, so let me show you. So I drag it, but as I drag, then I create a line in the paints that I've laid down, which is fine. When I set the paint, set it and pick up, set it and pick up, what I can call walking the dog, it gives me a different texture. And a lot of stems have nodules, have fine hair, if you will, on them. So it helps me to create the illusion of that texture is the reason behind it. Then too, in water, things elongate. You don't see the perfect shape, the reality of the shape. You see the idea of the shape because the water stretches. So when I'm tapping it in, it kind of gives it some movement. It also helps me with a little control. There are those that think I have control issues. Never. That's fun. So I'm back to your comments. Miss Sharon, you said either way, I'm going to be happy. You're awesome. All right, leave that alone for now. That lovely. Or actually, before I take off from the vessel, let's grab some of the yellow and pick up some of the magenta. And look at this luscious color it makes. I love that color. It's just luscious. So that's kind of an orangey brown, and I want to set some of that down on top of the lines we just made. And of course, because these colors are part of the stem, they'll be reflected in the water. So we'll see that we're going to add some of this color to the water. So the more yellow I add, the brighter the color between the magenta and the yellow or the combination is. And I'm keeping the brightest to the left. And this darker color that showed up over here as I kept dabbing in, I'll keep some of that to my right. I want to show some of that color in the space of the vase. So I'm just going to line some in. I want some of this pretty color over here in here as well. Really don't think, you're just laying it. Don't think. That's easy for me to say and very hard for me to do. People who know me are laughing right now. I'm rewinding that. Think away, because I can't practice that. So one more pass. I'm going to grab some of this Aqua before it dies on me and put some on top. I want some of this white. Remember, it's darker up here at the top. And why am I playing so long with this vessel? Because I'm letting the upper area dry more. So these colors that are here on my palette, I'm mixing as I go. There's no right, there's no wrong color combination. Suggestion is at the top and to the right. Keep it your darker colors, to the left the brighter and lighter. To start. And I'm going to let that dry now. So over here, back to this area. That's really letting that dry. I want another pass at this glaze. So I'm picking up some of the white. I still have some glaze down here and some of the yellow. I probably need a little more. I'm mixing that up a little bit because I do want it to be a little more concentrated as far as color goes. So if you like, please like as you go. The Facebook, put a comment in. Please don't be mean. Same with the YouTube. But what I want to say is, if you practice this, you then can do really any floral or any color combination you'd like will work. That's the glory of this. And in the description, I put an analog. I wrote the big word, analogous. Sorry for my lovely voice. Color palette. And what that means simply is that those are colors that are near and next to each other on the color palette. So the blues and the greens all are really close to each other, which means they play nice. So if you're touching them, they're not going to make an ugly color. So they're safer, that kind of color scheme to play with. The further away you get away from, let's say, the blues more into the red, it can shift, but there's blue in this magenta. So it just works well together. I don't know how to explain it other than that. The yellow to me is the Joker. So this bright yellow, I just want to show it in here, can really just shift. Look at all of this. What can happen? You can just really shift color. But at the same time, you really you don't create ugly colors. So that's what's wonderful about this color palette. So if you end up touching and playing with color and you get the result you're not expecting or that you don't like, just let it dry and paint over it. Or challenge yourself to work with that color scheme. Okay, now that I've made a complete mess of my palette, for the sake of instruction, and mind you, these colors are the same colors I use all the time. I've been using them for a million years now. They make great face tones. I used to call them my mermaid colors. All right, let's hit it. So I want to need some magenta. I'm going to quit babbling. I was babbling for a reason. Saving some time. I want some of that other pink. I am going to put some yellow in the party. I'm keeping the yellow away for a while. These three, it can make a really pretty brown, right? So I don't want the brown. I like the lusciousness of the pinks. So let's just show that if you can see it. This right in here is a top color, the top notes. That's where I'm going to bring in the yellow. The yellow is going to come towards the end of the game, not at the beginning. So I'm picking up some of the magenta, some of that pink. And I really remember the squares when we drew this in. If you're afraid to hit it with a paintbrush, you have white chalk. So it's one of the reasons I talked about having white chalk. And when we drew, I asked for squares, more squares and triangles than circles. Kind of cool how that works. And I did say that down here, this is our focal flower, our largest flower. We're going to open her up down here. So I pulled some of those petals down. Up here, it's a little more tight. If you're not concerned with the chalk, you can just come in and put some square lines in. And you'll see that it's not going to show up right away very well. That's okay. I do want the lighter shade over here towards my left side more because it's lighter and brighter on this side. So that light pink gives us that idea of lighter and brighter. And I'm using more of the corner, the edge of this brush, and I have not changed my brush, nor have I introduced water. I will do the same thing here, but I'm going to use more of the magenta and in two areas. So here at the bottom, I want some gray, Payne's gray. Here at this bottom, and here at the top, it's a little darker. So I'm going to start with some of that Payne's gray in there as well. So that was some of the lighter pink, some of the magenta, some Payne's gray. Here at the top, I'm making some of those same squared or triangular shaped marks. You can come in the center of a flower. It's its darkest, so you can put some dark lines in here. If you're just joining us, that chalk line is for folks if you are not confident in bringing in a paintbrush all by itself. You can use chalk. Chalk also creates a texture, just pure, brilliant, beautiful. So I'm also now going to pick up some of that hot pink and touch some of the hot pink. I do know that if I apply too much pressure to this brush, that gray magenta that I just put down, it's going to blend in together, and I don't want that. So I'm using a very light hand, and I achieve that by barely holding a grip to my brush. That probably didn't make sense. How could I say that better? I'm just loosely holding the brush handle, and I'm literally like dancing the brush across the canvas. So down here and up here, what I want to do is one, clean my bristles. I want some of this fabulous baby blue. Fabulous. Because we're playing over here in this pink, I want to grab some of that pink and that baby blue. And just make some lines. I squared bristles on my brush. I'm making squared and more triangular straight lines, vice round shapes. So I don't have a round brush. I'm going to pick up some more of that blue mainly, and down here put some blue. Here for this little guy, remember that yellow I talked about and that magenta? Let's just grab some. And we had a little white. That's pretty. Makes me want to paint faces, make body parts. I'm just going to tap in some of that color up here. It really stands up. That's lush. That's luscious. Love that. Just tapping in and moving and just playing around and twirling and turning my bristles, my brush. I mentioned earlier that we put all the colors into the vase. So now I'm just tapping. And I want more shadow and color on the right side. So I'm really concentrated over here on creating that. And I have more of the lights, the whites, the lighter grays here on my left-hand side to give the idea that you're seeing through water. That's the reason behind. I do want to pick up some more of that magenta just a bit. Put some up here at the top. Maybe drag some down. What this also does for me now is I know that I'm putting foliage, green leaves, that type of thing in there, and they'll create their own shadows and lines and color. And that color all marries, makes a great relationship with each other in the water. Does a little dance. So we're creating their music. I've been at it 1 hour and 8 minutes. Whew. Okay, so let's go like this. That magenta. We're going to make some eucalyptus. So I'm going to put the bristles of my brush flat against the canvas and pull down. In here, I'm going to do the opposite, just being that I'm going to point it more to the lower area of the canvas. When I'm pulling my brush, I'm creating some curvature to it, and then twisting and coming in and forming a line. Let's see if I can do it with blue. Can you see that? So I have laying the brush down flat, pulling, and then turning with a twist. Because I know that there's a stem that belongs there. And I don't need to mix a color to go with this magenta, because the magenta is laying on top of color, so it's creating its own for me. And this is the under shadow or the underpainting of the eucalyptus. So there's that one. And let's grab a little blue, not too much. So some of that blue and magenta. I'm going to do this. Don't be afraid to paint right over the top of something. That's how you create the depth or the idea of things, just like a floral arrangement where you can't see all of the pieces and parts. Okay, we're going to let that dry. While I'm here with this lovely color, I'm going to grab some of that yellow. There is a red that's in there, that magenta, that helps shift. You can make yellow and blue. Yellow and blue makes green, but put a form of red in with your mixture. It just makes it more of a realistic color of green. So with that, I'm going to make a darker leaf down here. I'm just going to set it down and pull the whole width of my bristles and pulling in towards the rose. So the whole, pulling one straight stroke down and giving a little twist towards the rose. And these are dark first because we'll come in with some light on top here in a bit. I'm staying very clear of the actual roses, right? I don't, when I come in with my next colors on the rose, I don't want to create an accident. So I'm being mindful that I will be coming back in here with more layers. I'm grabbing some of this yellow. It's lighter on this side, and I'm being mindful so I don't disturb the roses. So under here, there's going to be a grand beast of a leaf. So I'm really just letting my hand pull this down, and it's moving over the lip of that vessel. So I created this little, just little whoop-de-whoop. The idea is to have fun. And while I'm at it, I want to touch some of this green, just really drag some of the green in random spots where my stems were. I really don't want to put too much near my flowers yet. So pull the color out of the bristles. The pink and the magenta. And a little bit of white. I don't recall, did I put this peach color on there? I think I did. If I didn't, somebody's going to scream at me, but I think I did. Please don't scream at me. So on the left-hand side of this flower, right, it's lighter, so I want to pick some of this. It reminds me of sherbet. Some of this light pink and some of this, well, the mid pink and then the light pink, and let's grab a little white. Just barely touch some in. Got lovely little marks. Barely touch some in. Just sing to yourself. Whoop. Leaving it darker at the top. It's lighter over here on the left-hand side. So here, I want to grab some more of that pink. I'm getting a little more magenta. I want each flower to be its own color scheme. They're all similar, but here, it's little mid pinks. Down here, this bottom lip area, there is a little blue in there and that magenta. So everything that's on my brush, I'm going to come in here and come really wide. Kind of like a smiley face. right? And walk that in a little bit. We're going to let that dry. Pull that color out. Some blue. Same shape patterns that we've been doing all along. And let's grab a little yellow. Here's a scary color for me. So the same colors that are in my brush, and it makes this yellowy orange, I don't know, similar to a pumpkin maybe. But little goes a long way. So meaning like less is more. So I don't want a whole lot of this color in here. I'm keeping it primarily to my left-hand side because I've mentioned a million times this is where the light side of the piece is. And two, I don't mind bringing in just a little bit of this color. It's pretty. I'm going to pick up some white. And that really makes a pretty peachy color. I'm going to tap in some of that up here. That's also a way for me to test the color on the palette. And I don't want, I'm just tapping with those bristles around to give the idea of multiple little flowers in there. But I don't want that color on my pink. It's too brown for me. But what I will do is touch some just a little bit here and there. Let that dry. I'm going to come in with that pink or the magenta. Grab some white. I left this big guy alone down here. While I have some of that white here, I'm just barely going to touch. I'm being careful because I know how wet that color is, which means I can lose the color altogether. I don't want to do that. Up here, I want some of this white and the baby blue. And let's bring some of that down here as well. Pick up some more white maybe. Okay. I have glaze that's down here still, and it's got this gray note kind of to it. I'm picking up some of that white in the glaze. And I really want to lay some of that down here on my left-hand side of my vessel. It mutes some of that color that we've been putting on there. It's dry enough now that that's working for me. If I did this too soon, it would be no bueno. So I grabbed a little baby blue and some medium. I'm staying on my left-hand side because I need to create foliage right here. I've stayed away from my eucalyptus so that layer can dry. I'm breaking out the other green that I have, the Phthalocyanine Green. I'm going to put some blue. I want some light blue. Gotta have some aqua. White's still there, glaze is still there, and I'm going to come in with this. Picked up some, that's why I call them mermaid colors. I picked up some of the magenta, some of the blue, some of that green, the new green that I introduced. That's just adding another layer on top. Let's lighten that up. Let's grab some of the baby blue. It'll really make this pop. If you paint over something, that's okay. That's part of the process. Turn your piece upside down. We did talk about Fearless. So this has been drying, this left-hand side, or the right-hand side, which is now my left-hand side. And I want the magenta is my color of choice for this, for the underpainting. And we're going to create some eucalyptus bulb. So we're going to create another circle, oval, if you will, right there. Let's put one right here. It's coming from underneath that rose. That's 2 strokes, 1, 2. And for the sake of time, I may just leave it alone. Let's see. Let that go. So these guys need a friend in the center. We're going to end up putting flowers in here, and I have this pretty brownish going on. So let's grab just a little glaze and some of these magenta colors. Come right on top in here. Maybe a little yellow. And that really gives the idea, those lines, just dragging it across and not mixing the color up. Gives it a more of a realistic look to it very, very quickly. So we're letting that dry. While these other pieces are dry, I'm going to make some bright and light. So I'm grabbing some turquoise, grabbing some of the green, grabbing some of the yellow. And let's touch just here and there. I want a blue here. I'm putting the blue in because the blue for this guy is going to be the underpainting or the shadowed leaf. So that one's going to dry a little bit. It's not blue all by its lonesome. There's color in my bristles, so it's all mixing together. I now know that I'm close to the end. So I know that where I'm safe to put green. I'm going to come in and add a little color to that lip and some up here, just a little, so I can hit my edges is what I'm trying to say very easily, and I'm struggling with. I can hit the edges around the flowers, knowing where the next layer of color is going to come and that the flower is safe. I want to touch, I don't like that color in there. Okay, coming back around. Although I did these before those at the bottom, there's more glaze up here. So it's drying a little slower than here. So I feel safer bringing color to the bottom first. So I grabbed some of the green, put it on top of that, and it's on top of the magenta. And it has all these other colors, all the different greens we've made. There's that baby blue that's coming in. And just 2 strokes, 1, 2, over each area that I'm calling eucalyptus. Letting that dry. While I'm here, though, it has a stem, so let's create a really quick line, just very tapping the idea of a stem. I talked about walking the dog. That's just me tapping the bristles of my brush to the canvas. I'd like to do that up here, so I'm picking up some of this green, some of this purple. I want a dark note. I'm just going to draw it in. And this baby as well. And real quick, I'm going to pick some of that turquoise, bring the turquoise on top. So this is similar to how I paint. I do mix my own colors. I do multiple layers. So I would be letting this dry, and then I'd keep coming and adding layer after layer after layer. So you could do the same principle after this is done. You could go through after it's completely dry. You could literally start to finish and put the same layers right on top. And just it would just work. So here's just a little white that I've grabbed and putting in. And down here at the bottom, there's some of that phthalo green and the blue and the magenta. And grabbing some of that white makes a cool purple. I just really kind of want to lay some of that purple here. Contrast the lip of that flower, put some of that up here. Kind of brings them all together. Says we're all in this together. Here I'm going to just touch. Okay. Before I go away, it's baby blue. I'm just playing with the colors that I'm laying on to differentiate between the ones in the back and the ones in the front. And here with this color, I'm just going to touch some in to kind of make use of the blue. The piece that we used as the inspiration piece is just that, just the inspiration piece. And I want some yellow, some aqua, and I will end up with some of that. Oh, we're going to put hot pink in here yet. So some of that yellow and that aqua. It's very bright and light, just a little bit of the magenta. Just laying this bright color right on top. And here as well. And here I want to lay some of it in. And put some down here. That's such a bright splash. And that lime yellow or the chartreuse green, whatever color you want to call it, can act as a yellow as well. So I'm going to put some here. It brightens if you do too much. It loses its power. Like anything too much, it's not a good thing. Just seeing where I want it. Normally I pick my piece up, or actually normally I'm painting on standing up and it's on the wall. And I want to pick up some, I'm going to pick white. Choose to brighten this up more than the other a little bit. Up here at the top, there would be more light hitting these guys. Pull the paint out of the brush. I have some Florescent Pink. Little tiny bit. Same shapes. I'm not pressing hard. I don't want it to blend in with the other colors. You can mix this with other colors as well. We're going to lay color on top. So that provides my mix. And we're about done. Yay. Here's some pink in here. That's pulling that color down. Pulling the pink out of a brush. And I want some of this light pink and maybe some of this magenta. And some glaze, a little dab of white, and I'm going to take a deep breath. Just barely touch. Cool. So for now, I'm going to call attention to the stem. There's a stem in here somewhere. If you want, I can keep playing. I can just keep layering. Set that down. Last and surely not least, just my detail brush, no water. Putting some glaze on here because I don't want to overdo the white line. So just a little white detail and highlight some. I'll just say the centers. You can come in with the detail brush and put as much highlight as you'd like, but I would err on the side of caution that less is more. If you have the glaze is really impactful at this point. And after it dries completely, which is quite a while with a glaze on there, then you may choose, it'll darken. You may choose to come in and add another layer. I know that I will to all of them, and then I'll show what the final is like. I picked up some magenta just because I wanted to, and I probably shouldn't. And down here, I can't see my stem, so I'm going to put some highlight on that. And where's some white and some glaze. But if I make it too light, it's going to blend in too much with the vase, and I don't want that. Grab some of the magenta to put underneath that yellow line. Gives it more of a shadowed look. But I'm going to call her done. Thanks for playing with me. My name is Kat at katfurrow.com. I appreciate every one of you. There are those that go back and look and paint later, and those that choose to share. Whether you share it online or personally with me, it's all appreciated. And I'll just keep playing. I need to stop.